Coming up, the Rays are still hot at home and the Pirates win their 7th in a row. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. Local experts join us to go over the biggest stories in baseball. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. An efficient offensive day from the Phillies yesterday. They scored 9 runs on just 8 hits to beat the Rockies. Locked On Rockies and Phillies recap the final.
Rock on Rockies fans, Paul Alden here from the Locked On Rockies podcast. A weekend full of missed opportunities as the Rockies drop 2 close games and can't follow up on the win and shutout of the Phillies to start the series off. The Rockies certainly could have won one of those 2 of the middle games there, and then things kind of got out of hand from some people that are really starting to show their issues this year. Jose Urena needs to be completely reevaluated in his role on this team, especially as German Marquez is getting closer to return. I don't think he has done anything to deserve a spot in the starting rotation, and especially if that means Noah Davis is going to be removed from the rotation. Davis has had better starts and better stuff than Jose so far this year. If the Rockies do stick with Jose Urena, they're gonna need to see a lot more from him, and hopefully he can turn it around. We'll be breaking it all down right here on Locked On Rockies.
The Philadelphia Phillies knock off the Colorado Rockies in Game 4. Connor Thomas, your host of Locked On Phillies. Nice win today, 9-3 victory for the Phils, and they take 3 of 4 from the Rockies. It wasn't a good first game, but the bounce-back 3-game winning streak is awesome. The way this offense is playing looks really, really good, and I know the Rockies are the Rockies, and they're not a super competitive team, but this was a good bounce-back series for the Phillies, and you saw solid pitching performances by Aaron Nola. You saw one, well, Zach Wheeler needs to work some stuff out, but he's got to work it. Check out more on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.
The Orioles walked off on Sunday to extend their winning streak to 6 games after taking down the Tigers. Locked On Orioles has a lot to be happy about.
Get your brooms out. That is an Orioles sweep over the Detroit Tigers. They win it 2-1 in walk-off fashion in 10 innings on Sunday. Orioles are now 14-7 on the year. They were 7-14 to start the season last year. Listen, the Oriole bats did basically nothing all weekend. Eduardo Rodriguez had a perfect game through 6 2/3 innings, but they kept fighting. Anthony Santander with a pinch hit game-tying double in the 8th on Sunday. They didn't need a hit to win it in the 10th, but they didn't need a hit to win it in the walk-off fashion on Friday either. So they're getting things done. They win on a wild pitch. Grayson Rodriguez was awesome, following up Kyle Gibson and Tyler Wells being awesome this weekend. The competition isn't good right now for the Orioles, but the vibes are good for this team. 14-7, they sweep the Tigers. They've won 6 in a row. I'll recap it all coming up on Monday's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
The Astros didn't score until the 8th inning last night, but then they put up 5 runs to beat the Braves in Atlanta on Sunday. Locked On Astros recaps that Houston comeback.
Hey there, HM Wheelhouse here with Locked On Astros. The Astros sweep the Braves. All 3 wins come from behind wins. Yordan Alvarez impacted every one of these games. Today, so many stars. Christian Javier, 10 Ks over 6 innings. Alex Bregman hits his 500th career RBI. Corey Julks, the incredible Julks, hits the go-ahead run to make it 3-2, gets a single, put the Astros up, and then they add some insurance runs. They end up winning 5-2. Brian Abreu shut the door at the end, and the Houston Astros defeat the Braves, sweep them, win their 16th straight getaway game. So stay tuned in to Locked On Astros. Make sure you're an everydayer. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Apple, Google, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk about this because up next are the Rays. They are 13-0 at home. They've only lost 3 games this year. Let's hope the Astros can start a new trend in Tampa.
Kevin Gausman struck out 11 Yankees on the way to picking up a win in the Bronx. Locked On Blue Jays recaps after Toronto's win to end the weekend.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Toronto Blue Jays take the rubber match in the Bronx 5-1, finish up the road trip at 3-3, return home where they'll host the White Sox and Teoscar Hernandez and the Mariners this week at Rogers Center. Vlad and Dalton Varsho provided the offense. Whit Merrifield stayed hot. Kevin Gausman was the reason for the season. He was awesome. 18 of the 24 batters he faced today started with an 0-1 count. He was pitching from ahead all game, mixing in his fastball and his sinker really effectively, and the location of his fastball in particular was excellent. Now, the last time out, we saw Gausman touched up for 7 runs in that first inning against Houston. Outside of that 7-run, whatever the heck that was, Gausman has pitched 30 and 2/3 innings, allowed 3 runs. That's a 0.88 ERA. Holy moly. 3 walks, 30 strikeouts. Kevin Gausman is hot.
The Pirates have won 7 in a row after finishing a sweep of the Reds with a shutout yesterday. Locked On Reds and Pirates have more after the final in Pittsburgh. You okay?
Yeah. There's a lot more games left, I guess.
Your Pittsburgh Pirates are winners of 7 in a row. Vince Velasquez goes 7 innings, strikes out 10. Jack Sawinski adds some insurance in the bottom of the 8th inning. David Bednar gets his 8th save, and the Pittsburgh Pirates are 16-7 after a 4-game sweep of the Cincinnati Reds, a 3-game sweep of the Colorado Rockies that caps off a perfect week. They have the off day tomorrow. You had the whole thing with Drew Maggi getting called up today. The 33-year-old minor leaguer who's played over 1,000 minor league games didn't get the appearance, but he was there in the dugout. And this team's vibes are high. The vibes are high here at the Locked On Pirates podcast as the Dodgers and the Nationals await this week. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, and I will see you on the flip side.
The Rays are now winners of 13 straight at home. Locked On White Sox recaps as Chicago becomes the latest victim of Tampa.
Chicago White Sox lost to the Tampa Bay Rays Sunday afternoon, 4-1. Hey, I'm Nick Morawski from Locked On White Sox. To no one's surprise, the Chicago White Sox were swept in the 3-game series down in Tampa. Tampa Bay is just an absolute complete team. They do everything right. They do not make mistakes. On the other hand, the White Sox are still trying to figure out their identity. Sox are now 7-15 in the season. They're not completely buried in the AL Central because that's the type of division it is. But the Sox need to get on track. They're going to try to do it in Toronto on Monday with Lance Lynn on the hill. It is a 3-game series against the Blue Jays. For more, check out the Locked On White Sox podcast.
Coming up, Jacob DeGrom powers the Rangers past the A's. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's the NHL playoffs, it's the NBA playoffs, and baseball is back. It's the perfect time for you to download America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get that no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So you just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and if you don't win, you'll get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. Don't miss that chance at that no-sweat first bet. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Jacob DeGrom leads the league in strikeouts after fanning 11 more batters en route to a win over the A's yesterday. Locked On Rangers goes over the big game for DeGrom.
After a little bit of a scare, Jacob DeGrom takes the mound and looks absolutely amazing after leaving his last start with an injury. 6 innings, 1 earned run, 11 strikeouts. Ho-hum, Jacob DeGrom is absolutely incredible. I'm Bryce Patrick, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. The Rangers win 5-2 over Oakland, take the series after a very, very frustrating loss on Friday night. They absolutely wall up the A's on Saturday, and then Sunday come out with a pretty nondescript, non-dramatic win. A big 3-run home run from Robbie Grossman started off the scoring in the second inning. The Rangers were getting on base at a good clip and really taking it to this Oakland squad yet again, not letting up, still staying atop the American League West with this win. The Rangers got another run from a Robbie Grossman sac fly, some good base running, some good hitting, and some good overall play from your first place Texas Rangers.
The Dodgers took 3 of 4 from the Cubs in Wrigley over the weekend, finishing it off with a 7-run effort on Sunday. Locked On Cubs talks us through after the defeat.
Humbled is the word I would use. The Cubs were humbled by the Dodgers this weekend, losing 3 out of 4 at home after last weekend taking 2 out of 3 in LA. All 3 losses this weekend, even though they might have not looked it, felt kind of winnable, but they weren't able to get the job done. Today, Marcus Stroman had his first poor outing of the year. It's very difficult to play the Dodgers if you're going to start right-handed pitchers, and they really crush righties, and James Outman, Max Muncy, and JD Martinez all homered. Cubs had opportunities in this game, had some rough luck, hit the ball pretty hard, weren't able to find a lot of grass, and then Michael Fulmer just continues his really rough stretch. He gave up a couple runs in the 9th to blow this thing open. But tough weekend for the Cubs, no question about it. Off day, much needed off day tomorrow, and it doesn't get much easier as you welcome in the Padres to Wrigley Field.
The Angels went back to back to back on Sunday and needed all 3 home runs to get that 1-run victory over the Royals. Locked On Angels recaps the final in Anaheim.
Light that baby up. The Angels win the series against the Kansas City Royals this weekend as they take Sunday's game 4-3 on back-to-back-to-back home runs from Taylor Ward, Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani. What's going on, everybody? It's John Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. Really good to see the bats hitting the ball out of the yard. The Royals also did the same thing. Fortunately, the Angels had just the extra run to win this game. A little too close for comfort, especially against a team like the Royals. The Angels are still struggling with runners in scoring position. However, it is good to see the bats come alive. You wish they could have taken all 3 this weekend, but the bullpen kind of blew up on Saturday night. However, Sunday, they held it down. They did a good job, and the Angels walk away with the series victory. Hey, Mike and I are going to talk about this one on Locked On Angels. We hope you'll join us wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube.
The Padres beat the Diamondbacks in Arizona on Sunday, and Locked On hosts with both teams have more after the San Diego win.
Oh my gosh, is the Padres offense back? What's going on, everybody? Javier Reyes here, host of the Locked On Padres podcast. The Padres win and take the series against the Diamondbacks with the last win today. 7-5 in favor for the Padres. The offense, a really nice get-right series for the Padres against a very, very talented and good team in the Diamondbacks. The one game they lost to the series, getting shut out by Zach Gallen. Not great that they gave up 9 runs, but getting shut out, at least it was that guy, of all people, to shut down the Padres offense. And otherwise, today's game, Matt Carpenter, awesome big ribby game for him. That was really fun, and he's a guy, what I like about the Padres so far this year for sure is that either Nelson Cruz or Matt Carpenter, one of the two, have been hot at one point. Right now it's Carpenter, it was Cruz before, and that's really good to see, especially since they don't play at the same time typically, so that's been really good. Also got a first home run for Fernando Tatis Jr. Still waiting for Juan Soto and Manny Machado to really kick it into gear, but overall just a nice weekend. Ha-Seong Kim had a really clutch RBI on Saturday, and that was really fun. So hopefully they can keep this momentum going and at least boost their offense a little bit because it's been really lacking lately. And we're going to talk about it with my buddy Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. And of course, stay faithful.
Dre Jameson struggles in the finale to the San Diego Padres, and the D-backs drop 3 out of 4 to their NL West rival. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. It ended up being a tough weekend against the San Diego Padres. I was hoping for a split, but the D-backs couldn't get it done. Outside of Zach Gallen pitching phenomenally in Game 2, the starters in this series struggled to get through first innings, and in Sunday's finale, same with Dre Jameson, who threw over 40 pitches in the first inning, and it was the only inning he pitched in Sunday's game. The bullpen tried to hold it down, but they could only do so much. D-backs offense did show some signs of life in Sunday's game and throughout the whole series, as they did outscore the San Diego Padres, but it does not matter as they lose 3 out of 4 to the Padres. Kansas City Royals come in next, so hopefully the D-backs can get a bounce-back series against them, but I'm not happy with the D-backs not able to spoil Fernando Tatis' return.
Some late-game drama on Sunday Night Baseball lifted the Giants past the Mets last night. Our Locked On Mets tells us how New York lost it late.
This is Ryan Finkelstein, the host of Locked On Mets, coming to you after 2 tough losses in San Francisco, and it's frustrating because when you split a series but take the first 2 games, it feels like a series loss. But we have to zoom out and look at the road trip in general because they won 7 of 10 on the West Coast. That's not easy to do. They very easily could have lost one of those games in Oakland. They didn't. They swept that team. They could have lost that series to the Dodgers. They didn't. They won it. And, they were able to take 2 of 4 in San Francisco. And as bad as that Giants team has played throughout the year, I don't think that they're an awful baseball team. I think it's about a 500 team, and you split against them. So, yes, the Mets could have done better, but you got some terrible pitching from David Peterson on Saturday. You didn't get length from Tyler McGill on Sunday. Starting pitching is still an issue, and we'll be discussing that on tomorrow's show, but there's a lot of positive to take from this road trip. The offense has been great. Francisco Alvarez with the clutch home run to tie the game in the 6th inning on Sunday. That's a big confidence boost for him. So there are a lot more positives than negatives, and we're breaking down all of those on Monday's edition of Locked On Mets.
That'll do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game MLB. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On MLB and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.